What is up, folks? You are in an Alabama LSU postgame here at the Voice of College Football. The Crimson Tide knock off the LSU Tigers 20-14 in a football game. We'll say that in a football game. That was ugly. I don't know. There's a lot to talk about. The Alabama offensive line was dreadful tonight. It was dreadful. The running game was awful. The defense was okay. Gave up a couple drives, but made plays when they needed to. But for the most part, that was an ugly game from the offense. Ugly. No reason the University of Alabama, should never have 6 yards rushing. 6 net yards, because Bryce Young was like minus 17. Let me get the live stats right in front of me. Yep, they're there. This just might not be the team this year. Maybe they go to the SEC championship, but at this point, they're going to get stomped by Florida. Stomped. Not Florida, Georgia. Florida. Mm-hmm. There's the SEC channel. We got a guy reviewing Florida, South Carolina, and I'm sure he's having fun right now. That was an ugly game. Max Johnson wasn't good tonight. It wasn't like, the LSU quarterback put on a show. He was bad. He has a broken phone has a better internal clock than Max Johnson, especially on that last drive when he just kept taking hit after hit after hit after hit. And I'm a neutral observer, but I'm watching Alabama, and I'm thinking of you guys. But I'm thinking, I'm just sitting here throw the ball, stop holding on to it for so long. So Max Johnson wasn't good. Davis Price had a really good game on the ground. I thought the LSU offensive line was okay. Will Anderson. He was a freak tonight, and he had the turning point of the game. But that offense tonight was brutal. And that's not what we've come to expect from Alabama. That's not what we've come to expect. Bryce Young was fine for the most part. When he wasn't under pressure, he was pretty good. 24, 37, 302 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jameson Williams had some massive plays. No one's going to deny how good the passing game was. But this team, you're not going to beat Georgia. You're not going to beat a team in the playoff if you can't run the ball. And this team cannot run the ball. Going back to games against Mercer, we've talked about they have issues running the ball sometimes. Against Mississippi State and Ole Miss, Brian Robinson had some nice games, but Brian Robinson, by and large, is not any of the mutants that Alabama has had at running back over the last few years, or last, decade plus. But they get the win, so. But it's one of those where nobody's happy. You're playing a team with an interim coach. Ogeron's gone. They're missing more than half their starters. Another couple went out tonight. They're down like their top 3 corners. So, thank goodness the passing game looked okay. It's a team that's been gashed in the run game by Kentucky, Florida, handful of teams. And Alabama could not run on them. And they couldn't pass block, to be quite honest. LSU got 4 sacks tonight. Just not a fun game if you are an Alabama fan. Make sure audio's working. That's an ad. So, leave your comments, questions, reactions to this game. I think most people are going to have the same reaction and what I have up on the screen here. What in the world was that? On the screen here. What? That was atrocious. They're still in line for the SEC West. They can't, they'd lost that game. Texas A&M all of a sudden is a couple wins away from Atlanta. but they're still in control of their own destiny. They play Arkansas, and they still got Auburn, but yeah, yikes. I mean, that was just no one can come out of that game feeling good. And they got New Mexico State, of course. How could I forget it? Because I won't be here next week for the New Mexico State game. I'm going to Knoxville because I'm having a fun weekend with friends. Anyway, what in the world was that, guys? Give me your comments, questions, reactions to that, because I'm still trying to wrap my brain around it. What happened? What are your guys' thoughts on what happened tonight in Tuscaloosa? So the offense, the defense was fine. Davis Price had some runs. They made some plays, but that's you're playing a Division I team, and even though they're beat up, they don't have booty or whatever. They're still a Division I team that has athletes. So you're going to give up points, especially that first drive where they ran the fake punt and a really cool play, and you give up points. In modern college football, you're just going to give up points unless you're Georgia, and even they gave up 6 points to a backup quarterback from Missouri, and that team's awful. So you just have to wonder. Let me rephrase. So teams are going to score, but the offense has got to, geez. Let's go into the numbers just from a team stats preposition or whatever. Tied in first downs, 16 for 16. Not all that surprising. Third down, LSU was 5 for 18 on third down, 4 for 13 on third down for Alabama. But LSU was 5 for 7 on fourth down. Ed Ogeron's gone. It would have been very easy for him to just pack things up and be like, okay, we're going to mail this season in. But he's coaching for his next job, and those kids are still playing hard for him. And he was aggressive tonight. We've talked about it too. You're not going to beat an elite team playing scared, Scott Frost. You're going to go for it. You got to be aggressive. You got to take chances. Yes, it's more likely that we talked about this with the Ole Miss game. It's more likely you're going to get blown out that way if you're going for it on fourth down and you're just being ultra aggressive. But it's the only way you're going to stay in a game against a team we all think is elite in Alabama. I mean, they were ranked number 2. We can argue that later if they deserve to be number 2. Probably, well, they actually still might be number 2. This is a rough week for a lot of teams, but yeah. So good on LSU for that. Good on Ogeron and Jake Peets and Max Johnson, even though he was miserable tonight. Total yards, Alabama only outgained LSU 308 to 295. With the state that offense is in, that's unacceptable. Well, not the offense. The state that defense is in, that's unacceptable. Giving up 295 yards to a Division I team with talent, okay. Not great. Not great. But you live with it. You can go, okay, A, B, and C happened. They got some yards here. Because after that first drive, until the LSU did nothing for a large chunk of this game, which makes that 308 yards confounding because the Alabama defense is getting 3 and outs. They're getting 5 and outs or whatever. Like, they're getting 1 first down and then they're punting. Like, just confounding. Okay. Alabama did. Bryce Young, 302 yards passing, 24-37, 8.2 yards in attempt. Didn't throw a pick. While Max Johnson was 16 of 32 for 160 yards, 2 touchdowns. Did throw a pick, and of course they had completed a pass on that the fake punt, which was a really cool play. I'm not going to lie about that. Rushing, LSU 109 yards on 40 carries, 2.7 yards per rush. Now, of course, the Max Johnson took a few sacks tonight, and he was minus 15. You put those yards back on there at 124, which isn't great, but against Alabama, you take it, and you hope that other parts of your offense are going to step up. Alabama, on the other hand, had 26 carries, 0.2 yards per rush, 6 yards. Now, once again, let's take out Bryce Young, and they have 28 yards of rushing on 26 carries. So they're averaging now a little over 1 yard a carry. Like, is there anybody celebrating that? No. So I don't know what Bill O'Brien's got to do. We're kind of seeing it with Texas right now. I mean, just speaking of Sarkisian and this game plans from last year, Sarks, they're struggling. They're put up like 7 points against Iowa State tonight. So clearly the talent was there last year, and it's not all Sarkisian just being a play-calling genius, as some will have you believe. But, man, no excuse for how much talent Alabama has and how much they've lost, how much LSU has lost for that to happen, for that level of incompetence in the run game to happen. Because even, like I said, even if you take away Bryce Young's minus 22, negative 22 rushing yards, you're still only at 28 yards and 26 carries. So Brian Robinson, 13 carries for 17 yards. Like that unacceptable. Unacceptable at the University of Alabama. It should be. Yeah, pulling up, it's not all Sarkisian. Sarkisian has what we'd like to think is an elite running back in college football and ran for 104 yards tonight. Robinson had 18 carries for 90 yards, but they put up 7 points. And so clearly it's not just put that one up. Not just the fact that last year's team had Najee Harris and Mac Jones and all those weapons, Mechie, and they have the Heisman winner at wide receiver, for goodness sakes. Something is wrong here, and I don't quite know what. If there's Alabama fans in the chat that want to discuss it, is it just blocking? Is it the scheme? Is it Brian Robinson doesn't see hole? I don't know. But even if Brian Robinson doesn't see holes that well, you would think still get more than 17 yards. That was a beat-up LSU team. They're missing like over half their starters on defense. I think they're missing like 7 starters on defense, and then their defensive tackle went out tonight, and still nothing. Still couldn't do anything. So just give your thoughts, comments, reactions below. Try and figure out what happened in Tuscaloosa tonight. Very rarely, and I talked about this with the Florida game, we when they struggled in Gainesville. I was kind of like laughing because I'm like, only Alabama could go on the road against a good Florida team, win, and the sky is falling. Oh my God, we only beat Florida by 2. But now I'm on the flip side of that. Because, Florida's gotten worse. I still think beginning of the season, Florida, you could live with that. I don't know what's going on in Gainesville. You can check out the other show going on right now with Florida's postgame, and that'll tell you all you need to know about what's going on with Dan Mullen. But I still think at that time of the year, okay, you lost on the road, tough environment, and Florida had a good game plan. And I'm like, okay, the sky's not falling. It was a close game. Whatever. Tonight, the sky's falling because I don't know what that performance is indicative of, because that performance, isn't beating Georgia, or winning a national championship, which is, of course, the goals this year. It's national championship or bust. And if you aren't up to that capability right now. And do any of us think Alabama is? I mean, drop the comment below if you think Alabama can still win the national championship. Because right now, through, week 10, it really does look like Georgia and then just everybody else. There's another tier with like Alabama, Oregon, maybe Ohio State. Like, I don't know. It's hard to peg outside of Georgia who's good this year, which is strange. Because a lot of these top teams are struggling against teams they really shouldn't be struggling against. Ohio State shouldn't be struggling with Nebraska. Michigan State, I think we could all kind of saw that game coming. If you follow the Big Ten at all, Purdue's not a bad team. They have a knack for pulling upsets. Coming off an emotional win for Sparty, I think anybody who pays attention to college football long enough could kind of see that game coming from a mile away. Because Michigan State's good, but they weren't, or is really good, but they're not, prime like Georgia, Alabama, or like they're impervious to letdowns for the most part. And Alabama shouldn't be this close with this LSU team. It's a beat up LSU team. But you got to give a lot of credit to Ed Ogeron. You got to give a lot of credit to Jake Peetz and their defensive coaching staff. They were aggressive. They played to win because there are teams that don't play to win. I think of last year between Kentucky and Georgia, where it was like 14-3 or something, and Kentucky's running like their 8-minute offense with 10 minutes left. Like they weren't playing to win. LSU played to win tonight, and they almost got it. Unfortunately, a flag on the last play of the game kind of negated all tension when that ball was thrown up. I mean, it could have been on Alabama, but where the flag was thrown, it was holding, and then it ended up being a personal foul. So where do you go from here? You got New Mexico State next week. Basically another bye week. And then you got Arkansas, who beat Mississippi State today. Good old Wampin for them. And then you got Auburn on the road, and Auburn's nothing special. And you go play Georgia. So they should win. They should win their next 3 games. But after tonight, you can't safely be like, oh, no problems. Because they don't have any room for error. Not only for the playoff, because if they lose another game, they're out. I know the committee is really trying to set up a 2-loss Alabama being in the playoff. I don't think anybody here is going to deny that with the way they ranked Mississippi State and where they've put some other teams, how they've weakened some other resumes. They're going to try and get a 2-loss team in there. But I don't think you can put it, especially if like Oklahoma's undefeated, Michigan State or Ohio State, whoever comes out of the Big Ten has 1 loss. Or Michigan, and then you have Oregon with 1 loss, and then Georgia. So I don't think you can, but they're going to try. But the thing is it now if you lose to Arkansas or Auburn, you're running the risk if A&M wins out that you don't even win the SEC West. Like there's no room for margin for this Alabama team, and usually there is. We've talked about it before. Since Saban's been there, they've gotten through the regular season how many times? 2008, 2009, 2016. Lost to Auburn in 17. 2018. 20. So 4 times? No, there had to be more than that. 08, 09. 13, they lost to Auburn. 14, they lost to Ole Miss. 15, Ole Miss. 16, nobody. 17, nobody. 18, so 5 times. So, I mean, Kyle, roll tide, but that performance was ugly. I mean, the defense was pretty good, and there's positives you can take from the defense's play, but for the most part, that offense was awful. That was a stinky offense tonight. Especially in the run game, where they had 6 total yards, net yards. That can't happen. Do you think Auburn can beat Alabama? I don't know. Because they'll be at home. I think it's very possible. The key is going to be, can Bo Nix score 3 times? At least. Because if this Alabama run defense shows up to Jordan Hare in a couple weeks, Auburn, they're not going to score more than 21, 24 points at most, because Bryce Young is still and had a good game tonight for the most part. So I would say no, because I don't think Bo Nix can put up 24 plus points against Alabama. But no, it's not outside the realm of possibility, because pick 6 happens, fumble, whatever. So no, it's not out of the realm of possibility, especially after tonight. That was an ugly performance tonight. Well, I think it's the other way around. I've talked to friends about this. If you're Georgia, if not this year, when? Because Alabama's going to return basically everybody next year. So you assume they're going to be better. Name another elite team. There's none. And if you're Georgia and Alabama's got 1 loss going into the SEC title game and they beat you in the title game, okay, they're going to – if they beat Georgia in the title game, I'd put odds are they're not going to play. They're not going to play each other in the semifinals, and there's no team that's going to – maybe Ohio State – that can compete with them in the college football playoff. So they're going to play again, and if you're Georgia, you can go, they're not going to beat us twice. But yeah, Georgia's got to be foaming at the mouth. If not this year, when? Now, they'll always be up there because of how well they recruit. But, man, this just seems like the path is laid out. I think that's what you'll get. I think that's what you're going to get in the SEC championship game is Georgia and Alabama. If Alabama loses to Auburn, you run the risk of – you're starting to run the risk then of Texas A&M going to the championship game, and it'd be awesome for A&M fans, whatever. I don't think we could legitimately talk ourselves into Texas A&M, Georgia being a good game. Although Texas A&M looked pretty good today against Auburn, holding them to 3 points. And that's why today's game's kind of why I don't think A&M could beat or Auburn could beat Alabama, because Bo Nix is just, I've coined no Bix. He was 20 for 41, 153 yards and a touchdown. And yeah, he's just not. He is not it, folks. So yeah, I mean, Georgia's path to the national championship game. For Alabama's path to get to the national championship or to win a national championship involves beating Georgia twice. Most likely. They didn't look good. No. I still don't know how they won that game in College Station, because Zach Calzada is not a good quarterback. But they're getting wins. They're 7-2 now. They're 4-2 in the conference. So, no, I don't think Alabama or A&M looks like a great team, but, big momentum today. They picked up a couple really nice recruits. They beat Auburn at home, and they're in the driver's seat for at least second place in the West, which is nothing to sneeze at. Yeah, if we're hypothetically speaking about an SEC championship game. Yeah, and I mean, Georgia's, as a Missouri fan, I was watching a little bit of the Mizzou-Georgia game. I didn't want to punish myself. I don't deserve that punishment. But, Mizzou ran the ball a little bit, and they ran the ball okay. I think A&M would be in a spot to run the ball pretty decently. But I don't think A&M would compete against Georgia. And, yeah, I, again, agree. If you're Auburn, unless you score a defensive touchdown or a special teams touchdown or something weird happens, you're going to have to score 24, 27 points. If Alabama brings the offense they had today on the road, you're going to have to score between 21 and 24 points, and I don't think Bo Nix can. for as bad as Max Johnson played today, and Bo Nix is better than Max Johnson, Bo Nix also has just the wild factor where he just kind of, oh God, what's he doing? And you don't know. And then he makes a nice play or he throws a pick. But, those who watch the game, Alabama fan, LSU fan, whoever, what did LSU do tonight? Or what has Alabama done all season? Not even tonight, because Alabama's run game has struggled at times this year. Like, unlike we've seen it in a long time. I mean, this is the least amount of rushing yards they've had in the 21st century. Pulling up some stats for some other games where we've talked about it. Week 2 against Mercer, my first game doing this. Against Mercer, team stats. They averaged 4.6 yards per rush. Not the worst thing ever, but it's Mercer. And if you go into the box score, Brian Robinson was at 7 yards a carry, and besides him, it was a whole lot of yuck. Florida. Going to the box score again. They averaged 3.3 yards a carry. And if any of you saw what South Carolina did to Florida tonight, we talked earlier in the show, at that time you could probably box and say Florida's a little bit better than we give them, or we're going to give them credit for right now, because they stink. They're terrible. But at that time, I think we all thought, okay, it's a pretty good Florida team. So let's pull back up the box for this one. I have the live stats from Alabama for some defensive stuff, but for the most part, we'll keep it on ESPN's easy to read. So, I mean, Alabama's lucky that Danny Etling wasn't a quarterback tonight. They are a dumpster fire. It's crazy to watch, because after the Alabama game, I was like, okay, they're a pretty good team, and we talked about they're pretty good. In the Georgia Florida series, weird things happen. Like, I remember 2014, Florida was just a disaster, and it was Nick Chubb's freshman year, and Georgia looked pretty good. I mean, they came into Columbia and beat Mizzou 34-0, and then lost the East because of this game, and Florida beat them. It's just one of those games. It's always weird, and yeah, so we were talking about maybe Florida could win the East potentially. Probably not, though. And then it's just, as the season's gone on, man, if Florida and Tennessee were to play tomorrow, I would pick Tennessee. But yeah, give more thoughts and reactions on that game in Tuscaloosa tonight. It just, the crowd didn't seem very into it for a long time, until I think they all went, oh Lord, we might lose this game. Agreed. I mean, but last year even, with Florida winning, but Stetson Bennett looked much better this year than he did last year. And Florida's team is just not as good. And Florida started falling apart when they lost to Kentucky, and then they lost to LSU, and then they lost to Georgia, and then they've lost to South Carolina. Next they play, who do they play next? I think they got Samford or something at home. Then they go to Missouri, and if you lose that game, oh Lord, the heat on Dan Mullen is going to be just insane. But as far as Alabama goes, we've had this conversation before about the run game, and going back to what I was saying, Alabama's lucky it wasn't competent quarterback, not great, but just competent. Danny Etling might win that game tonight. Somebody like that could have won that game. If Max Johnson, like I joked earlier, Max Johnson, there are broken phones with an internal clock better than Max Johnson. And I'm sure if you're not an Alabama fan, or just a neutral observer, like doing this, I'm not a massive Alabama fan, but Mark asked me to do this channel. I said I would. I'd like to think I have pretty good knowledge of college football, and it's hard not to know every single thing that goes on with that program. So he asked me to do the Alabama Voice of College Football Alabama channel, and then of course hopping on the SEC channel as well. Yeah, I'm sure if you don't like Alabama, I'm sure tonight was a blast. That LSU team missing over half its starters, a defensive tackle went out, and Bryce Young got sacked 4 times, hit a couple other times, and they couldn't move the ball. The offensive line was abysmal. And if you can't stop backup, whoever's, I know Georgia's missing their best linebacker, or maybe he's just leading in sacks. It's hard to, who's the best? I know they're missing him, and they might miss him for a while for legal reasons we won't go into. But, I mean, what's that Alabama line going to do against Jordan Davis? Are they going to push him out? Like, not at this point, no. So, Alabama's in a rough spot. This might just be, this looks like it's just going to be that year where they don't win a title. They could still be pretty good. They could still win anywhere from 12 to 13 games. They win the SEC championship game or lose Georgia in a title game or whatever. This team could still win 12, 13 games, but I don't see this year at this point, from what you've seen through 10 games. There's quite a few of you watching right now. Can any of you see at the end of the year Bryce Young lifting the college football playoff trophy? They absolutely will. Can any of you see them lifting that trophy? The Alabama Crimson Tide. After what you saw tonight, after what you saw against Florida, after what you saw against Texas A&M, can any of you see it? Because at this point, the answer is no. Now I can be convinced. If there's Alabama fans in the chat who know more than I do about this team, I can be convinced. But I have 3. I sit here with 3 screens, and I'm watching everything. And again, I didn't watch a ton of the Missouri-Georgia game. I like to watch Georgia, and I'll see them in person next week. But I'm also a big Mizzou fan, and I'm not going to put myself through that torture because I deserve better. But I'll see Georgia up close next week when I'm going to Knoxville, just for some fun. I like to go to one game a year outside, one fun game a year, and tickets weren't that expensive because Tennessee had just lost to Pitt when I bought them. And yeah, I was like, okay, no, we'll go. A couple friends and I were like, we'll split gas and we'll get a hotel and have a blast. So if there's anybody from the Knoxville area, let me know where to go to lunch or dinner. That's true. When you do have the best college football coach in the country, or of all time, you always have a shot. But, Saban's been there since 2007. And there have been years they haven't won national titles. Contrary to popular belief, they haven't won every national title. And I think this just might be one of those years. And that's okay. You got the 09 title or the 11 title or the 12 title or the 15 title, 17 title, the 20 title. You have national titles. You can kind of go, okay, we got that. This might just not be. And the thing, too, is if you're an Alabama fan, a note of positive here in a very negative stream, and they won the game. The defense really came up big on that last drive. Everybody's coming back for the most part. Maybe a couple guys leave for the draft, but I think most of the teams are young enough where they can't go to the draft. So they should be right back in it next year, and they recruit well enough. And one of their recent classes, like the best recruiting class they've had of all ever, 247 wise. So they'll be back in the hunt. But if you're Georgia, if not this year, when? This is the clearest path you're ever going to have. And if you're Alabama too, you're probably kicking yourself because, once to go back to back for a second time after blowing a couple other chances. Well, I don't know if UGA will ever be rebuilding. They recruit at an insane level, and I don't think anybody in the East next year can really challenge them. I mean, we'll see what happens with Florida if they get a new coach or whatever. Kentucky will bring a bunch of guys back. But, we don't actually think they'll compete with Georgia. Maybe your defensive coordinator leaves, and that hurts a little bit. Mizzou's bringing in an elite recruiting class, but they're not going to be ready for a couple years, and they might have a new coach. Not this year. They won't fire Drinkwitz this year, but next year. So I don't think UGA will be rebuilding, and because they're in the East, and you're only, when you look at the schedule, your tough game is Auburn, and probably going into next year, Tennessee. You have 12 weeks to prepare for the SEC championship game because teams can improve, and when you work on things, but it's harder to work on things when you have to constantly be improving things just to knock off this next team. Because when you're Georgia, and we've talked about this too, when you're Georgia and you're playing Missouri and you're playing Vanderbilt and you're playing whoever, you're going to kill those teams, and you can work on things. Like Georgia got JT Daniels a handful of snaps today, and you're Alabama and you're going to Texas A&M. It's like, oh God. Then you're playing Mississippi State on the road. It's like, oh Lord. And then you got Auburn, and all these teams are not as talented, but it's just tougher in the East. And I have no problem saying that because look at the rankings, look at the standings. There's one East team ranked, two Kentucky's ranked, but they probably won't be after today when they gave up 48 points and 500 yards to Tennessee in a preposterous game because Tennessee had the ball for 7 minutes and ran 47 plays to Alabama's 99 plays. Whatever. I'm going on a tangent about a different game because that was wild to watch. But going to Alabama, you can never count them out, but they haven't won the championship every year, and this just kind of looks like one of those years they're not going to win it. In the comments, reply if you think a two-loss Alabama team can get to the playoff. Say they just they kill New Mexico State, they kill Arkansas 31-10 or 38-10 or something like that. And then they play Auburn and win 27-13. Not a blowout, but kind of a comfortable win. Then they play Georgia and lose I don't think Georgia would put up 31 points. They lose 20 to Georgia. Or 24-17 or, whatever. They lose a one-score game to Georgia. Does Alabama belong in the playoff? Because at this point, I would say no. Just morally, I don't agree with putting a two-loss team in the playoff. Because the games have to matter. But I could be convinced. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. If a two-loss Alabama game gets over an undefeated Cincy, I don't care how bad Cincy looks against Tulane or Tulsa or whoever. Cincinnati, if it wants to go in over one-loss conference championship teams, does need to start kicking the crap out of teams. They just do. But an undefeated Cincy should go in. A one-loss Big Ten team will go in, whether it be Michigan State, or Ohio State, or one-loss Oregon, Oklahoma. They have a tough one next week against who do they play next week? They play Iowa State. So, okay, thank goodness. This chat is on the right side. Yeah. No, okay. Because I see a lot of people, and you can see what the playoff committee loves doing is putting in narratives. That's why Mississippi State was ranked so high. They were 5-3 and beaten maybe Texas A&M. Texas A&M was still breaking in Calzada, which is whatever. That's why Fresno State's ranked instead of UTEP, or not UTEP, UTSA, because Fresno State lost to Oregon, so we got to prop up Oregon's resume. So it'll be interesting to watch. I agree. I completely. You're preaching to the choir here, gentlemen. Or ladies, if lasers go pew pew, don't know, doesn't matter. Everyone can be a college football fan. Yeah, no, 2 losses won't get you in, but they're gonna try. You can be sure they're going to try to get Alabama in there, especially if they lose to Georgia close. And I've told my friends before, I'm like, I don't care if Alabama loses that game on a 70-yard field goal that Alabama thinks they'll kick 6 and it goes off their own player's helmet and through the upright. You can't put a 2-loss team, but the committee's going to try. They're going to try and put them in over, a handful of teams. And that's true also if more chaos happens. Like if Oregon loses a game, which I don't think they will, Ohio State drops 1, Michigan State's got 1 loss, and it's a crazy year. And UGA's, people compared this year to 07. Be like, 2007 was crazy, and it was. Trust me, Missouri Tigers fan. I remember how amazing 2007 was. But people also forget that year ended with LSU and Ohio State playing for the national championship. So, even the craziest years still end with the powerhouses playing for it all. I'd want Cincinnati to make it. Like, I think their defense is pretty good. I don't think their offense would move the ball at all against. I think if you put Cincinnati at like a 3 seed against, Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan State, whoever gets the 2 or, in that matchup, the 2-3 matchup, I think that would be a fun game, but I don't think Cincinnati would compete against Georgia or Alabama or probably even Ohio State. Yeah, they could. I don't think. Who was it? Benny Cunningham that said the NFL was rigged? I don't think college football is rigged that heavily. Or else I have someone I keep bringing this up because this is an Alabama stream and whatever. But as a Mizzou fan, if college football is rigged, I have someone to sue for mental damages. And so do a lot of other fan bases, including Georgia. Oops. Yeah, just I was sitting here setting up the stream and stuff, and I'm watching some of the post game, and I'm looking on Twitter. I'm just like, what? That was my first. This banner was my first reaction. Like, what in the world was that? What in the world was that game? Because Alabama won the turnover margin, which is why they won. They won it 2-1. No, excuse me. Yeah, they won it 2-1. Sorry, it's getting late. Now LSU had 2 turnovers. Alabama only had 1, and LSU almost had a third one, and it was still only a 1-touchdown game. LSU was throwing the ball from the 30-yard line into the end zone to win the game. And just like, how? Mind-blowing. Mind-blowing performance tonight. And I know I've said it a couple times, and we've pooped on Alabama's performance, but you got to give a lot of props to LSU. You do. Ed Orgeron, for some reason, outside of 2019, of course, when he had maybe the most talented college football team of all time, for some reason, when he is an interim coach, which he technically is right now because he's not the head, he's been fired, gets his guys to play their tails off. He did it at USC. He did it at LSU, and he's doing it at LSU again. And it's like, man, where was this against Auburn? Or, they beat Florida, but where was this against... they're 4-5 now. Where was this against UCLA? Where was this pride against Kentucky when you were healthier? Yeah, they recruit well enough. They'll always be a threat. We'll see who they hire next year. It's going to be an interesting. This is going to be an interesting coaching carousel because you have a lot of jobs with some to them that are going to be open. USC's open. LSU's open. Don't be surprised. That was just a hypothetical of them trying to get a 2-loss Bama team. At this point, that game won't be close. And don't be surprised if Florida is in an interesting spot. Dan Mullen keeps shooting himself in the foot. You read some of these things, you're just like, dude, shut up. They're starting to lose football games. If they're 6-6, because they have Samford next week, so they'll be 5-5 going into a 2-game stretch of Missouri and Florida State. I wouldn't bet on they lose both games, but if they lose both games, that job could be open. Nebraska might be open. Virginia Tech is open. Miami might be open, although they've won some games recently. So I don't think that job will be open. But there's going to be a lot of good jobs open, and including LSU, and it's going to be interesting to see who they hire. Because who's top of the food chain right now? Is it UCLA or not UCLA? Is it USC? Is it LSU? Who does Michigan fire Harbaugh if they lose ugly to Penn State and Ohio State? Like this coaching carousel is going to be fascinating. Going back to this comment, I kind of sped through that, Walter. I don't think it'll be close at this point. It was just kind of a hypothetical. Like this committee is going to try and get a 2-loss Bama team into the playoff. They're going to try their hardest. At this point, you can't imagine that game will be close because Kirby's going to have his boys ready, and they're going to be fired up because they know this is their chance. This is their chance. This could be. You look at. I'm trying to compare it to something else, and I'm having a hard time. Another sport. The Bucks last year in the NBA. Like, okay. Kyrie's out, Harden's out. You're playing the Hawks in the conference final. LeBron's out. You're playing a really good Suns team, but you're like, this is your chance. Like this is, or the Raptors in 2019 when they were like, okay, like this is your shot. The Eagles in 2018 or 2017. You have shots, and this is going to be Georgia's best one. They're always going to be in the hunt. Always going to be in the hunt. So even if they don't win it this year, it's not like, well, that's it. Like fire Kirby Smart. They ruined their chance. They'll always be in it, but this is like the clearest shot. I was trying to think of hockey examples, but I don't know hockey's not a big thing in SEC country, I have found. Which is fine. That's why they lost the Atlanta Thrashers. I'll just keep going about this game. That was if you're from an Alabama fan perspective, offensively you can't take any. You can take the positive away. Bryce Young had pressure in his face all night. He got rocked a couple times, and he played pretty well, all things considered. So you can take that as a positive. Defensively, you can take a lot of positives. Will Anderson's a beast. They were determined to knock Max Johnson out of the game. Not in a dirty way, but they were hitting him. They covered okay, but again, beat up LSU team. How much can you take from that fact? It's like, oh, well, we limited this team. There's just not a ton of positives you can take over a 1-score result. And this isn't, and these two teams have been known to play, even when LSU's kind of meh and Alabama's great. I'm thinking of like 2014. God, well, I keep going back to 2014 for these references too. Give me 2 seconds. LSU, Alabama, Wikipedia. I'm thinking like 2014, Goodness gracious. I want the full games list, please. You know, 2017 it was a 24-10 game. 2016 it was a 10-0 game. So like even when LSU's been kind of bad, this game's been competitive. But tonight there's no excuse. If you're Alabama and you're trying to reach that level that Georgia's at, that game could not be competitive. Hey man, go Tigers! It's rare to say this in a loss. It is. You should be proud of your team. They played really, really hard tonight. Considering how much they've lost to injury, their coach is fired. The rest of the coaching staff, you know, who knows what's going to happen to them. It's not too often, you know, an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, whoever keeps their job when a head coach is fired. So, and give a lot of credit to the players when they're in flex right now. They played their asses off. And I don't mean to curse that much. And Mark says don't curse, but I think it's warranted here. They played their tails off defensively. They really played their tails off. Yeah, it's true. I'm not saying proud, but that was as good a performance as LSU probably could have put tonight. And they played hard. It's easy for teams to quit when you're at this point of the season. And what do you have left to play for? A bowl game? Woohoo! You're 4-5. They're 4-5. They got Arkansas. They got ULM. They should win that game. So they need to beat Arkansas or Texas A&M just to get to a bowl game. And they came out tonight and they played their butts off. And that doesn't always happen in the situation. It would be easy for LSU to fold it in and be like, okay, you know what? Lost year, new coach, injuries, you know, A, B, and C. Screw it. You know, we're in Tuscaloosa. Let's just take our butt kicking and let's get out of here. You've seen teams do that. They didn't tonight. They played their butts off, and they were 30 yards away from a win. 30 yards. They played super aggressive tonight. That's how you're going to beat Alabama. I know looking back, we go, I wish they kicked that field goal on 4th and goal, and then you would only need a field goal at the last time. But you can't rely on that. They didn't coach scared like Scott Frost did today for Nebraska. So, no, always be proud of your team, of course. But there's sometimes you watch a performance and you're like, oh, that was a bad day. LSU fans should not do that after that game. They played as well as they probably could, considering everything that's going on with that program right now. And we'll see. You know, who do they get to coach them next year? Will it be James Franklin? Will it be Mel Tucker, who had a rough day today? You know, this coaching carousel, this winter, it's going to be nuts. We just talked about it. I mean, how many high-profile jobs are going to be open? Hi, everyone that's tuning in. I can see the numbers of how many people are watching. Leave your comments, reactions to this Alabama game. What in the world was that? What happened? Why was it so close? Leave your thoughts and reactions. We're going to go for a little bit longer, and then I'm going to go to bed because I have to be up early. Comments. He does seem to do that, but with Alabama so often running into the teeth of the defense, there's still holes. There's just nothing there. And this isn't the first time they've had issues running the ball. Definitely not the first time. You know, they had struggles against Mercer, Florida. So we've talked about it on the show. It's not the running game they've had. And Brian Robinson's fine, but yeah, I think that's a big part of it. Their O-line's just not very good. In some games they look okay. Tonight was bad, and it wasn't just in the run game. Bryce took a lot of hits. You know, he got sacked 4 times. And Bryce Young has a tendency sometimes to hold on to the ball too long. And I really, really wish he would use – and this is something we've talked every game, I think, this year, except maybe like one. He needs to run the ball and take off. I respect the young man for wanting to stand back there, move around, keep his eyes downfield, because that's what you're going to have to do in the NFL for the most part. But man, sometimes I'm just watching on my TV. It's like, Bryce, just take the 6 yards. Just take the 6 yards. 2nd and 4, 3rd and 4, first down on 3rd and 5, whatever. Take the 6 yards. You don't need to try and force something up the sideline or down the middle to your tight end. But for the most part, he was okay tonight. I don't think Bryce Young's the problem, and he's only going to get better. That's what's scary, is he's only going to get better. But we'll see about the rest of the team when it comes back. Yeah, the O-line just not very good this year. And that's a scary thought for Alabama, because usually it's just like they just plow through teams. We'll see. I mean, they got 3 games before Georgia, probably Georgia. They play New Mexico State. They play an Arkansas team that they should beat. And they got Auburn on the road against no Bix. And early in the show, people mentioned it. Auburn can get them. I think some weird things are going to have to happen. But Auburn can definitely get them. Yeah, Will Anderson was a monster. He was a freak tonight. Just an absolute freak. He's so good. And he'll be back next year. I'm trying to think in doing these shows after every game. I think you're kind of right. There really is no identity offensively. Like, what do they do well outside of Bryce Young making plays? But it's kind of like the Seattle Seahawks right now, where it's Russ making plays, and then other than that, it's what do you do well? Defensively, I think they're fine. They've kind of picked it up a little bit. They were atrocious in that A&M game, but Will Anderson talked, and since then, they've been okay. They've been much better. Since that game, 9 points to Mississippi State, and we just saw Mississippi State just put up 28 in Arkansas on the road. 24 points to Tennessee. Look, I know Tennessee isn't great, but that team can score some points. And then 14 points today. So today's game is more on the offense. The defense. They gave up 2 drives. One was a fake punt, and even I know LSU's hurt, but they're still Division I caliber athletes to go to LSU. They're still elite athletes, and with how college football and football in general has started officiating itself, teams are going to go on a couple drives. I mean, I said this earlier. Missouri went on a couple drives against UGA today. It happens. So the defense was really good today, all things considered. Oh, yeah, crazy things do happen in the Iron Bowl. That's why it's so fun. But for the most part, you could look at those Alabama team. You can look at those teams and go, if Auburn can score some points, I don't know if Auburn can score 20-plus points on Alabama. And that's what it's going to take. I don't think it's going to take like 40 points. Or, last year, it's like, well, if you're going to beat Bama, you better score 70. Because Ole Miss scored 50 and lost. But I don't know. It's going to take like a defensive score or something. No, I said that against A&M too. So we'll see. Should be an interesting one. Sorry, I got a friend who just gets some info from him because he has connections to certain things in a different sport. Actually, no, it is this sport, but I can't tell you that because it'll be really obvious who it may be if you follow me on social media. Anyway, yeah, okay, we'll go for what time is it? Leave every comment, question, or reaction to this game you may have in the next before 11:07. And I will get to all those comments. I will get to all those questions, and then we're going to take off for the night. So if you have anything you want to say about this game, about the SEC, Alabama, LSU, college football in general, the playoff picture, the Heisman race, leave it all in the next 7-8 minutes. We'll go. Fire Dan Mullen. Yeah. Here's the thing. They have Samford next week. So they're 5-5. They'll beat Samford. Then they go to Missouri, which Missouri stinks. But I don't know how well can a cold Florida team win in Columbia at 11 a.m. on a Saturday? Will they be up for that game? Because Missouri will be. I don't have doubts that they'll be up for that one after the fights and stuff last year. And then they go to Florida State. And even if you split those and you go 6-6, everyone knew this was going to be a little bit of a rebuild year. But, man, especially with some of the comments he made about recruiting, and you just look at the recruiting classes, 2022 recruiting rankings. I mean, I'm just going to 247. Florida is, I'll let you know when I get to them, 22nd. That's unacceptable at the University of Florida. You should be top 10, no problems. Like, why are you behind? Why are you 9th in the SEC? Why are you behind South Carolina, Arkansas, Kentucky, Missouri? Missouri's 5th with the 14th ranked class. Good for them. And then you're behind your powers. But, yeah, no, that's atrocious. Probably. I don't see what the harm is against New Mexico State giving him a ton of carries. See what happens. I mean, again, Nick Saban is the best coach the sport has ever seen. So you never want to bet against him too hard. But I don't know if in 3 games against Stanford, Arkansas, Auburn, that the offensive line can get to the point, especially since it's struggled now for quite some time. I don't think it can get to the point where you're comfortable with them against Georgia. Again, this Alabama team is kind of like the Seahawks with a much better defense, where offensively it's what do you do well besides Bryce Young just making plays? They don't run the ball that great for an Alabama team. They have a lot of speed and talent on the outside, and Bryce Young can throw the ball. So the passing game. But so often it's not just drop back 3-step drop, hitch route, back shoulder. It's, Bryce Young making plays, Jameson Williams making plays. He's a kid that doing this show and watching Alabama closely. Jameson Williams is somebody that has gotten so much better since week 1. So much better. Where when he came in, he was just kind of a speed guy. And I knew he was a speed guy at Ohio State, and Mizzou recruited him. And he was just he's a pretty good wide receiver right now. He looks really good, and he still is a deep threat. Sometimes it can. They were kind of rolling there for a little bit for a couple games after the A&M game, but it's still no excuse to run the ball for 6 yards against LSU. Vanderbilt could run for 6 yards against LSU, I think. No, that could run for 6 yards. 6 yards. 28 yards if you take away the minus 22. Get every comment, question, in before 11:10, and then we're going to wrap things up. I will get to everything you leave. You can spam for all I care. But talking a little bit about the Heisman race now and Bryce Young, where does he rank in that? I don't know. You got some guy, Kenneth Walker was really good today. Kenneth Walker, and especially if Michigan State can go 10-2, I think he'll be right in there with it. He'll have a chance against the Buckeyes. You got Kenny Pickett will be there. Sam Hartman will be up there from Wake Forest. Heisman race is just kind of all over the place right now. So is Bryce Young in that conversation? Absolutely. But I don't know, Matt Corral, Struggle, win. Who's that comedian that does that? Shoot. I think it'll be fun. I think if Georgia has a weakness, it is their corners, who are still excellent, but it is the weakest. And I think Alabama could exploit that a little bit. Much I don't know. Because John Mechie's a great route runner for a college player. Jamison Williams is your deep threat. So it could be interesting. It should be a fun game. You know, there's going to be a lot of anticipation for it, and I wouldn't count Alabama out. Again, because Nick Saban is Nick Saban. However, at this point, it looks like it could be a very ugly game. Again, leave your comments, questions for until about 11:10, and then I'm going to hop off. But I'm just going to start thanking Mark for letting me do this every week. It's a lot of fun. Here at the Voice of College Football, you can subscribe to this channel. You can subscribe to whether you're on Voice of College Football Alabama, Voice of College Football SEC. Subscribe. I will not be here next week for the New Mexico State game. I'm going to Knoxville for the Tennessee-Georgia game, but I will be back the following week for Arkansas, and he'll be here for Auburn, depending on work. I now work nights because I work for the St. Louis Blues now. So thank you all for being here. Let's get to these last few comments, all right? Leave everything next 3 minutes. Boom. Front seven for UGA. Good is understating it. Front seven for UGA is freaking awesome. Bama still has a lethal passing game, but your passing game needs at least a threat of a running game. Because Alabama, Bryce Young was pretty good tonight, but he only put up 20 points. That game was crazy. I don't know how the hell you guys won that one either. I don't know. That was nuts. Jake, let me know where I should go grab lunch or dinner next week. Who will I be? Tennessee. I'll probably get like a Tennessee polo at like a Walmart or something the night before when we're driving down. Yeah, I'm going to have fun. I'll be singing Rocky Top and whatnot. I'm there to have fun. I'm not there to fight anybody. I'm not going to throw anything on the field. No, A&M has 2 losses. They lost to Mississippi State, and they lost to they're 4-2 in conference. They still have a shot. Knoxville from Memphis. Gosh dang it. I really need to get in touch with somebody who can tell me where to go for like lunch or dinner. Hey man, I'm just not there to get into a fight. All I ask from Tennessee is a half of fun, which I think their offense is perfectly capable of giving me a half. And I don't think Georgia's offense is explosive enough where I look up at halftime and it's like, oh God, it's 27-0. I think it'll be like 20-7 at half, which you can talk yourself into when you're in the stadium. I'm not going to be outwardly rooting for you, like Tennessee, and be like, wow. I just want to be a part of the atmosphere and not against the atmosphere. It's going to be a ton of fun. I'm really looking forward to it. Maybe we'll do a little vlog while we're there for this channel, because I think that would be kind of cool. I'll talk to Mark about it. I think that'd be kind of fun. Not a long one, but just a few minutes of like walking into the stadium, and I'll do it on this channel, not like a personal channel. Just be like, hey guys, what's up? This is the guy that does the Alabama channel, but I'm here at Tennessee, Georgia, because 2 months ago tickets were like $50. Oh yeah, the basketball incident. I'm never for throwing trash, but I mean the mustard bottle was funny. I'm not gonna deny that. All right, guys, we'll do 11:13. Get all your comments, because then I really do need to get going. I need to be up at like 6 tomorrow morning, and it's past midnight in a lot of places, and it's 11 o'clock here in St. Louis. I'll have fun. I have a hard time imagining me not having fun before the game, during the game, after the game. Get your last comments in the next few minutes. We've kind of wrapped things up. For Mark, thank you. Zach Remelius, you can find me. Let me pull that up real quick. You can find me here on Twitter. If you want to follow me and hear things about hockey, because that's my second favorite sport, and I'm watching it every night now. Thanks, ESPN Plus. And yeah. I mean, fired. Like come on now. Come on. He's not going to get killed. By the media, he will be, because he cancels media availabilities. And for his players too, but so does Elijah Drinkwitz, which is strange because he's been the guy that's like, hey, let's invite everybody into our program. Let's get players hyped and fans hyped. And I know you meant not. I know you meant not literally. I know. It's just weird. Hey man, you have a good night too. All right, enjoy the games next weekend. Enjoy your week. If you have a fantasy team, good luck to all of you. I think I'm going to lose my fantasy game because Kyler's out and he's my quarterback. And yeah, I got like Ryan Tannehill now. So hooray for me. Last call for comments, questions, anything. Last call. It can be about anything. You can spam it. I'll get to all of it. But you have about a minute. And then I really do need to go. We've gone way longer than I planned on, which is fine because there's a lot of you in here and you all were awesome tonight in the chat. This part makes it so much easier. I could talk for an hour to myself in the shower about college football. And I do. Believe me, my mom gets irritated. When I lived with her, my roommate gets irritated now. So you guys just, it's, even, at times there's only 3 people watching and it still was a blast. Because you guys were an awesome. That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. I feel that. Go Bucks. I do have Mike Evans, so if he could get a couple touchdowns right now, I'll take. It's in Oxford, right? I'll take Ole Miss. In a good one. That should be a fun one. Yeah, congrats. I know if there's Georgia fans in here, congrats to your Atlanta Braves. That was a lot of fun. Jock Peterson yelling swears at the top of his lungs was awesome. And congratulations. 30 seconds. But thank you guys all for being here. Thank you to Mark for doing this. Subscribe to Voice of College Football SEC, Voice of College Football Alabama. There is a Voice of College Football Georgia, I believe. Subscribe to Mark Rogers' channel at the Voice of College Football. He covers every team. The guy knows USC. Everyone knows USC. The guy knows Oregon to Florida State to Virginia to Clemson. And if you want to talk about Brennan Armstrong and the Heisman, there's your guy. I'm just kidding. I don't really know what his views of Brennan Armstrong are. But thank you guys all for being here. It was a lot of fun. Thank you if you're watching at the post stream. You're just kind of rewatching it. We had a lot of fun here tonight. And I will see you all maybe sooner, but at least 2 weeks for Arkansas. Everyone have a good night. Congratulations to Alabama, but they got a lot to work on.